My name is Celine Harris, and until today, I thought I had the life anyone could dream of. A successful career as a financial analyst at Parker and Reed in Minneapolis, a husband I trusted completely, and the sense of security that comes with having built something meaningful over years. But all of that came crashing down in one fell swoop when I discovered the truth. My husband, Daniel, had been lying to me for months, planning his escape with another woman. His betrayal was worse than I could ever have imagined. It started innocuously enough. I was sitting at my desk in the quiet of our rental house, typing away at a work report. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through the inbox on my laptop. I'd been meaning to check Daniel's email for a while, and today, for some reason, the feeling was overwhelming. I clicked on a thread marked with Kate's name, and then another. With every email I opened, it became clear. This wasn't just an affair. This was an elaborate scheme designed to destroy everything I had. My eyes scanned the messages between Daniel and Kate. They were filled with cold, calculating language, talking about their future plans, how everything was going according to schedule, and the escape they were planning. The most shocking part? Daniel had been planning this for 8 months. 8 months. I had been blind, but not anymore. I read their words, feeling a sickening churn in my stomach, but I kept my composure. This wasn't a time for tears. This was the time to act. There is no job in London, is there? I typed the question out, my fingers shaking but determined. The text sat there for a few seconds before I pressed send. I knew the answer, but I needed to hear him say it. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen, waiting for his reply. Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't the comforting silence of familiarity. It was the heavy silence of impending destruction. The door to the living room opened. Daniel stood in the doorway, his suitcase packed by his side, his eyes avoiding mine. I knew then he was planning to leave. He had made up his mind, and this was the end. I could feel a deep, old rage bubbling inside me, threatening to rise up, but I swallowed it down. I had learned the hard way that the best weapon was often silence, and right now I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "How long have you been planning this with her?" I asked, my voice steady now, as anger replaced the shock I'd felt earlier. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flickering toward the packed suitcase at the door, then back to me. "Celine, it just happened. Kate and we—" His words trailed off and I saw the guilt in his eyes. He didn't even have the decency to apologize. He didn't need to. I could already see it all. 8 months, I said, finishing the sentence for him. "How long have you been planning this?" 8 months. Daniel looked at the floor, his shame written all over his face. I never meant for it to go this far. It just sort of evolved. Evolved. How convenient, how natural in his mind to destroy everything we had built together and leave me with nothing. I felt bile rise in my throat. I had trusted him. I had sold my house, my memories, my security, all for his grand plan. And now I had nothing but a broken home and a life I no longer recognized. "The money's already gone, isn't it?" I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He turned his gaze away from me, avoiding my eyes. I could see the guilt eating away at him, but I didn't care. The truth was clear. The money from selling our house, my 401k, the assets I had accumulated, all of it had been siphoned away by him and Kate to fund their new life in Austin. I could feel the tears start to form in my eyes, but I held them back. Now was not the time for weakness. My voice was controlled, even as it shook with fury. "You sold everything. You took everything I had, didn't you? All of it, to fund this affair, to fund your escape." Daniel's eyes softened, but it wasn't sympathy. It was guilt. And it was too late for that now. "I didn't want to hurt you, Celine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought we'd be okay. I thought we'd start fresh in London. Just the two of us. Start fresh." The lie hung in the air between us. I thought of all the things I had given up. The house, my savings, my retirement funds, all to make this new life possible. And now I was standing here with nothing. "What about the house in Austin?" I asked. "You already bought a house there, haven't you?" Daniel didn't answer, but the silence confirmed it. They had already bought a house using my money. Kate's name was on the deed, not his. He had planned every detail, and I had been none the wiser. "You thought you could just walk away, didn't you?" I asked, almost to myself. "You thought I would just let this happen and move on." Celine, please, Daniel said, taking a step toward me, his hand outstretched in a futile attempt to comfort me. I stepped back. No, Daniel, you don't get to just walk away from this. Not after everything. My words were cold, but they were also resolute. I had been blind to the signs for far too long, but I wasn't blind anymore. The door clicked, shut behind him as he left. I stood there, staring at the empty living room, at the boxes packed in every corner, at the life we had once shared now reduced to a few scattered memories. I opened my laptop again, my fingers trembling as I began typing. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not this time. The first thing I did was gather everything I could find, bank statements, email records, and any financial transaction I could track. The money trail was my weapon, and I knew how to follow it. I spent the next few days poring over every document I could find, tracing the funds, piecing together the lies Daniel and Kate had woven. It didn't take long before I realized the full scale of their scam. They weren't just having an affair, they were running a scheme. Daniel had been taking money from clients, hiding funds, and using it to fund Kate's lifestyle. He had started a Ponzi scheme under the guise of consulting, luring investors with fake promises and fake returns. And I had been his unwitting partner in it all. I called my lawyer, Sarah, and explained everything I had uncovered. The situation had escalated from a divorce dispute to wire fraud, embezzlement, and financial fraud. This was no longer just about me and Daniel. This was about exposing what they had done to other innocent people. I wasn't ready to go to the authorities just yet. I needed more proof. I reached out to Marcus, an old friend who worked at the bank where Kate had opened her newest account. With his help, I was able to freeze the accounts just as they were about to finalize another property investment. And then it happened. Kate panicked. She reached out to me, begging for me to stop. But it was too late. I had everything I needed to expose their entire scheme. Daniel called me once again. This time his voice was different, desperate. He was unraveling. You ruined me, he texted. Are you happy now? I didn't even flinch. No, Daniel, I typed back. I'm just getting started. The FBI got involved, and soon Daniel and Kate's world came crashing down. They were arrested for fraud, embezzlement, and blackmail. The money they had stolen was tracked, and the victims they had defrauded were finally given justice. But for me, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the truth, about exposing the lies and taking back what had been stolen from me. Months later, after the sentencing hearings and the dust had settled, I sat in my office at Parker and Reed, a promotion in hand, with a new sense of purpose. I had built my career, my life, back from the ashes. And Daniel, he would never be able to manipulate me again. The phone buzzed again, another text from Daniel. His voice was no longer the calm, calculated one I had known for years. It was full of desperation. Celine, please, we need to talk. I never wanted to hurt you. Kate's not who you think she is. I stared at the text, the words barely sinking in. Kate wasn't who I thought she was? What a joke. I had spent months, no years, turning a blind eye to the warning signs, and now he wanted to play the victim. I had no time for him. There was too much at stake, too many lives he had ruined. And it was no longer about him or me. It was about exposing them, making sure their lies would never harm anyone else again. I stood up, pacing around the empty house. The silence had become suffocating. The house that was supposed to be a new beginning now felt like a cage, the boxes still waiting to be unpacked. My dreams of a fresh start lying in ruins. Do you really think I would ever fall for your lies again, Daniel? I muttered to myself, gripping the phone tightly. I couldn't stay here anymore. I couldn't keep drowning in my anger. The only thing that mattered was taking down Daniel and Kate once and for all. I went back to my desk, pulling up my laptop. I had started gathering the evidence, but I needed more. My fingers flew across the keys as I accessed Parker and Reed's tracking software. The financial tools at my disposal were far more advanced than anything Daniel could have imagined. The very thing he had always thought would give him an edge was now my weapon. As I typed in the data from Kate's accounts, I could almost feel the pieces falling into place. There was a pattern Daniel and Kate had thought they had covered up so well. Transfers every 3 days, always in even amounts, bouncing between different accounts to confuse the trail. But they had been sloppy. I smiled coldly as I started to unravel their plan. Daniel had underestimated me. He thought I would just stand by and watch as he ruined me. But I was smarter than he realized. I could almost hear the whispers of doubt creeping into my mind. Was I crossing a line? Was I becoming too consumed with revenge? But the thought of Kate's smug face, the way she had looked at me with such fake sympathy, pushed those doubts aside. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. I dialed my lawyer, Sarah, with a sense of urgency. Sarah, I've got more evidence. I'm not waiting anymore, I said, my voice steady but intense. Celine, I'm with you every step of the way. But you need to be careful, Sarah warned. If you're going to make a move, it needs to be clean. The police are involved now, and you've crossed a line into something much bigger than just a divorce settlement. I knew the stakes were high, but I couldn't turn back now. Daniel and Kate had planned this for months, meticulously destroying my life. Taking everything I worked for, I wasn't about to let them get away with it. The next morning, after a restless night, I made my first call. It was to Marcus, my old college friend. He now worked at the bank where Kate had opened her most recent account. Marcus, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, I need your help. I've found a pattern, and it leads to Kate. She's been moving money through her account, and I think I can stop them before they get away with it. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Celine, this is bigger than you think. If you've traced her account, you need to act fast. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you. You're right about Kate. I've suspected something, but I never had proof until now. I thanked Marcus and hung up. It felt like a small victory, but I knew it wasn't over yet. The moment they realized I was on to them, they would try to cover their tracks even more. They were already getting desperate, especially Kate. As I waited for Marcus to get back to me, I turned my attention back to my work at Parker and Reed. Despite everything that was happening in my personal life, my professional focus was sharper than ever. I needed to keep my head clear and stay a few steps ahead. A few hours later, Marcus called me back. I flagged Kate's account. The bank's already frozen the funds, he said, his voice tinged with excitement. This is it, Celine. They're making their move to close a deal on an investment property, and we've caught them in the act. My heart raced. This was the opening I needed. I couldn't afford to let Daniel and Kate slip away now. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. It's done, the accounts are frozen, and I've got them cornered, I said, my voice a little breathless. Good work, Celine, Sarah said, her tone supportive, but with a hint of caution. But remember, this is only the beginning. The police are involved now, and we need to make sure everything is airtight before we make our next move. As I hung up, a mix of emotions swirled inside me. I had never imagined I would find myself here, fighting to take down my own husband. But I had worked too hard for too long to let him take everything from me without a fight. And with each step I took, I could feel the pieces falling into place. The next day I met with Linda, my boss at Parker and Reed, to discuss my vacation days. I need to take some time off, I said, my voice steady, but I also need your help. Linda was quiet for a moment before she responded. Celine, what are you asking me to do? I need access to the financial tracking tools we use at the firm, I said, my voice firm. I need to dig deeper into Daniel's transactions. He's been hiding money for months, and I want to make sure the authorities have everything they need to bring him down. There was a long pause before Linda spoke again. I can't authorize you to use company resources for personal matters, but I'll give you your vacation time. Just be careful, Celine. Don't do anything that will get you in trouble. Thank you, I said, hanging up the phone with a new sense of determination. I spent the next few days working through the tracking software late into the night, piecing together Daniel's complex web of lies. Each transaction I uncovered, each email exchange between him and Kate, made my blood boil. But I wasn't just exposing their lies anymore. I was getting ready to take them down. I called Marcus once more, laying out the final pieces of the puzzle I had uncovered. It's bigger than we thought, I said, my voice low. They've been running a Ponzi scheme for months, luring investors with fake returns. I'm not the first victim, just the biggest one. Marcus was quiet for a long time before he responded. This is huge, Celine. You're sitting on a goldmine of evidence. The FBI needs to see this. Just make sure they understand everything, I said, feeling my pulse quicken. Daniel and Kate are about to learn the hard way that you don't mess with me. As the days passed, I worked tirelessly, putting together a case that would not only expose Daniel and Kate, but also ensure they faced the full consequences of their actions. But just as I thought I had everything under control, things took an unexpected turn. One evening, I received a message from Daniel. It was short, and it chilled me to the bone. You don't know what you've done, You've started something you can't finish. I looked at the message, feeling a chill run through me. For the first time since all this started, I felt a flicker of fear. What had I actually stumbled into? How deep did Daniel and Kate's deceit run? I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling the weight of the last message from Daniel sinking in. His words were unsettling, but I wasn't about to let fear take hold. I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. I closed my laptop with a decisive click and turned to Nina, who had been my rock through this whole ordeal. She had been staying with me, keeping me grounded when the world felt like it was spinning out of control. She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. I could see that even she was starting to get anxious. "Are you okay?" she asked, sensing my tension. I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "I will be," I said, my voice steady but filled with determination. "It's just this message from Daniel. He says I don't know what I've started. He's trying to scare me." Nina looked up at me, her expression hardening. "Don't let him. You've got this. You've been 2 steps ahead of them the whole time." I smiled faintly. "You're right. I've played my hand perfectly so far, but I need to stay focused. I can't let him think he has any control over me." I quickly grabbed my phone and dialed Sarah's number. As it rang, I felt my heart rate pick up, the realization of how close I was to taking everything down sinking in. This wasn't just about Daniel and Kate anymore. This was about bringing them both to justice. "Celine, what's up?" Sarah answered, her voice calm but alert. "I need to meet with you," I said, my voice low. "It's time to make our move. I've got everything in place, but I need your help to take it to the next level." A pause. "Are you sure about this? This is going to get messy." "I'm sure. I've gone too far to turn back now. We're going to hit them where it hurts." I could feel the adrenaline building inside me. I've got access to everything. I have the final piece of evidence, and I'm ready to go public. "All right," Sarah replied, her tone shifting to one of full-on support. "I'll be there in an hour." I ended the call, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Sarah was in. She was one of the few people I trusted implicitly, and she knew exactly what we needed to do. An hour later, Sarah arrived, and I handed her the final piece of the puzzle, a USB drive containing every piece of evidence I had carefully gathered. Emails, bank records, every conversation between Daniel and Kate, the Ponzi scheme they had been running, and the damning proof of their fraud. I watched Sarah's face as she reviewed it. "Celine," she breathed, looking up at me. This is everything. You've got them." I nodded, the fire of resolve burning brightly in my chest. "I know, but we need to make sure the authorities take this seriously. It's not just about making Daniel and Kate pay. It's about stopping them from doing this to anyone else." Sarah glanced at the clock. "We need to take this to the FBI now, but we have to be strategic. If we go too fast, they could cover their tracks. Let's make sure we're solid before we send everything off." I agreed. The next few hours were a blur of strategy and preparation. We worked together, cross-checking every detail, making sure we had all the evidence lined up perfectly. Then at exactly 4:30 p.m., we made our move. Sarah called the FBI agent she knew, and by 5 p.m. we were sitting in a conference room laying everything out for them. The agent in charge, a sharp-eyed woman named Agent Dawson, listened intently, flipping through the evidence we had presented. She didn't interrupt, but her expression hardened as the details of Daniel and Kate's scheme unfolded. "How did you get all this?" Agent Dawson asked, her voice steady but impressed. "I'm a financial analyst," I replied, my voice steady. "I specialize in tracking money trails." Daniel made the mistake of thinking I wouldn't know how to follow them. Agent Dawson nodded slowly, glancing at her partner, who was already typing up a report on his tablet. "This is huge. If what you're saying is true, this goes beyond a divorce settlement. We're talking wire fraud, money laundering, and potentially organized crime." The weight of her words hit me hard, but I didn't flinch. I had come this far, and I wouldn't stop now. I was already in too deep, and now it was about getting justice, not just for me, but for everyone Daniel and Kate had wronged. The FBI's investigation into Daniel and Kate moved quickly after that. Over the next few weeks, I worked closely with the agents, providing more evidence and tracking their every move. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. I had a front row seat to the unraveling of the lie Daniel had woven so carefully over the years. As the weeks passed, the pressure mounted. Daniel and Kate didn't know I was working with the FBI. They were still under the false impression that I was helpless and broken. They thought I was too naive to figure out what they had done. But with every call, every email, every transfer they tried to cover up, I was right there, watching, waiting. One evening, I received a call from Sarah. "Celine, you won't believe this," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "The FBI has cracked it wide open. They've traced the money trail to several other victims Daniel and Kate thought they had already silenced. They've found more evidence. This is bigger than we thought." My heart skipped a beat. What does that mean for them? "They're in deep now," Sarah said. "Kate's already on the run, but Daniel, he's about to be arrested. We've got him. You've got him." The sense of triumph that washed over me was overwhelming, but I didn't let myself get carried away. This wasn't over yet. Daniel was a master manipulator, and I knew that even with all the evidence against him, he could still fight back. The FBI's raid on Daniel's office and Kate's hideout happened just a few days later. It was a coordinated effort that took them completely by surprise. I sat at home watching the news coverage of their arrests unfold. As the camera panned to a handcuffed Daniel being led out of his office, his face twisted with a mix of disbelief and rage, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The man who had spent years manipulating me, taking everything I had worked for, was finally going to pay the price. But it wasn't just about him. It was about me reclaiming my life, my career, and my dignity. It was about showing the world that no one could take advantage of me without facing consequences. Yeah. The trial was long, drawn out, and emotionally draining, but the evidence was undeniable. Kate was arrested in Miami, attempting to flee the country. Daniel, facing charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and more, took a plea deal. His life, the one he had built on lies, was crumbling faster than he could process. The courtroom was filled with tension as Daniel's fate was sealed. I sat in the back, watching as he was led away in handcuffs, his eyes meeting mine for the first time in months. He had no words, no defense, just a hollow look in his eyes. As I walked out of the courtroom, a strange calm washed over me. The justice I had been seeking was finally within reach. I had faced down my betrayer, and I had won. Stoicum. The months following the trial were a blur. I took some time off work, allowing myself to breathe, to heal, and to rebuild. The financial tracking unit at Parker and Reed offered me a promotion, something I had never expected. I had earned it, though. I had proven that I was more than just a financial analyst. I was a force to be reckoned with. Nina helped me settle into my new life, and slowly, I began to rebuild from the ashes of my old one. I found a small house, nothing too fancy, but it was mine. Truly mine, Mom. I decorated it carefully, making it a reflection of who I was now, strong, determined, and independent. One evening, as I sat in my new kitchen, sipping a glass of wine, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the pain. But I also thought about how far I had come. I had taken my life back into my hands, and no one, not even Daniel, could take that from me. The woman staring back at me in the reflection of the window was no longer the naive, trusting wife. She was someone new, a survivor who had turned betrayal into triumph. And that woman was ready for whatever came next. As I sat in the new living room of my small but cherished home, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had passed, and now I could breathe freely again. The house, though modest, was mine. It was the first time in a long while I had felt like I truly belonged somewhere. Everything had been stripped away. My old life, my marriage, my trust. But what I had gained in return was far more valuable than anything I had lost. I looked at the framed photo of Nina and me, laughing together in the living room as we unpacked my things. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, that I could rebuild. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Sarah. "Kate's been sentenced. It's over, Celine. You did it." A small smile crept across my face. It was over. I had done it. Daniel and Kate had tried to tear everything I had apart, but in the end, it was me who came out on top. I had fought back with everything I had. They thought they could break me, but I had proven them wrong. I was stronger than I ever knew. But even in this moment of victory, I knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. The scars would remain, but they wouldn't define me. What defined me now was the woman I had become, someone who knew her worth, someone who had the courage to fight for justice, and someone who would never let anyone take her power again. What would you do if you were in Celine's shoes? How would you handle betrayal, especially when it feels like everything is slipping away? Share your thoughts below. And if you have ever faced adversity and come out stronger, I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.